Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. Property stocks retreat amid speculation that efforts to revive the real estate sector will be piecemeal. A $20,000 subsidy may be offered to boost Hong Kong's birth rate, according to sources. And there's a sliver of hope for Palestinians desperately in need of food and water. Punitive stamp duties, which have been in place for over a decade, have been blamed for sluggish home sales in recent months. While calls to remove them have not fallen on deaf ears, the adjustments could be piecemeal.
With the policy address less than a week away, speculation is mounting if and how the chief executive will try to resuscitate the stagnant property market. Land registry records suggest there were fewer than 2,900 home transactions last month, the smallest so far this year, and down 57% from the peak in March. Calls have been growing to scrap punitive stamp duties introduced more than a decade ago, when home prices skyrocketed. It is understood authorities may only remove some of the anti-speculation measures. According to Singtao newspaper, the buyer's stamp duty, or BSD, currently set at 15% of the purchase price, will be conditionally waived for non-local buyers who arrive via so-called talent visas. Should they leave the city within 7 years, the time they need to obtain permanent residency, then they will have to settle the BSD first. The ad valorem stamp duty, or AVD, will continue to apply for local buyers who already own another property, but the rate will be slashed from the existing 15%. There's also no word on the SSD, or special stamp duty, charged on the sale of properties purchased within 3 years. The potentially piecemeal adjustments sent developers tumbling in the stock market. CK Asset Holdings dived 3.2%, while Sun Hung Kai Properties fell 2.5% and Henderson Land Development 2.4%.
The government might offer a $20,000 subsidy for each newborn child to boost the birth rate, according to sources. But a lawmaker said cash is not the only consideration, while a social group called for more assistance for children as they grow up. Maisie Mock reports.
Ahead of the chief executive's policy address, there are expectations that the government will offer a cash incentive to help boost the birth rate. Sources said the authorities have been mulling a $20,000 subsidy for each newborn child to reverse the decline in the city's birth rate. Over 50,000 babies were born in 2019, but births dropped to around 32,000 last year. Lawmaker Nixie Lam, whose DAB party has come up with proposals to increase the birth rate, said while a subsidy is better than nothing, couples will also consider other factors.
There's a housing problem, there's whether the career development, and they have other concerns on that. I think the government really needs to take everything, like a cross-bureau discussion on who can provide what sort of things to support this issue.
Wong Man Ling from the Alliance for Children Development Rights urged the government to support citizens from their birth until they are 18 years old. The alliance also said existing subsidies for children and teenagers should be improved, and the government and parents should jointly contribute to a savings account so that youngsters can go to university or start a business when they grow up. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Chief Executive John Lee, who returned from Beijing this afternoon, confirmed that the SAR has signed 3 agreements worth $450 million.
Well, the 3 cooperation agreements that were signed during the Belt and Road Summit relates to medical technology cooperation, IT cooperation, and also investment cooperation. These relate to different areas such as professional services, architectural services, also relate to green energy, technology contribution.
Lee pledged to continue seeking trade opportunities by going overseas more often, especially to Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. He also confirmed meeting Vice Premier Deng Xie at the forum and briefed him on the latest situation of Hong Kong. There are fears that the construction of 15,000 public housing flats may be delayed if a contractor loses his registration following 5 deaths at his sites. This comes a day after the contractor's sister company failed to have its license renewed. Janice Low reports.
Aggressive construction engineering will be struck off the government's list of registered contractors on November 16th. The buildings department refused to renew its license after a worker was killed by an H-beam in Yaochang last year. Raymond Yeung, who used to head the geotechnical engineering office, said the authorities were not convinced that the company could comply with the building's ordinance. The firm has 1 month to hand over 5 residential and commercial projects and a leisure facility to other contractors. The decision not to renew its registration has shifted the focus to sister firm Aggressive Construction Company, which handles public building projects. It is seeking to renew its license, which expired in April. But Fei Xiu from the Association for the Rights of Industrial Accident Victims believes the firm will not be successful. That's because there were 3 fatal accidents that killed 5 workers on its sites between 2020 and this year. 3 of the victims died when a 10-meter-tall tower crane collapsed at a site in Sao Mau Ping last year. Aggressive Construction Company is responsible for building over 15,000 public housing units. There are concerns that the completion could be delayed. The Housing Authority is monitoring the company's projects, while Chief Executive John Lee has instructed the Housing Minister to keep an eye on the situation. Janice Low, HKIBC.
The High Court has rejected a bid by a former civil servant to appeal against an order forcing him to retire at the age of 45. Wong Chao-ming, who worked for the Inland Revenue Department, had applied for a judicial review 2 years ago. He was told to take early retirement after failing to submit on time a declaration form to uphold the Basic Law and bear allegiance to the SAR. Judge Russell Coleman today said Wong did not have any reasonable excuse for the late submission. Coleman added that Wong's case has no prospect of success. Overseas, trucks loaded with emergency supplies are preparing to enter the Gaza Strip from Egypt. But initially, only 20 lorries will be allowed in, a mere drop in the bucket, after Israel blocked food and water to over 2 million Palestinians.
Humanitarian aid from Russia is on its way to the Palestinians trapped in the Gaza Strip, while emergency supplies from Venezuela arrived in Egypt en route to the besieged enclave. US President Joe Biden, who visited Israel in a show of support, said on his way home that Egypt has agreed to reopen the Rafah crossing to Gaza. But only 20 trucks carrying humanitarian aid will be allowed entry initially. That offers little comfort to the Palestinians, over 1 million of whom were ordered by Israel to evacuate to southern Gaza ahead of an expected land assault.
All Gaza is a place or a ground for complete bombing. So I ask the people out there, the people who have a heart, who do care, to find us a safe haven, or at least get us out of Gaza, get us help.
Israel has continued to bombard Gaza nearly 2 weeks after fighters from the Palestinian group Hamas crossed the fence dividing the two sides and killed 1,400 people. Almost 3,500 Palestinians were killed and 12,000 injured by Israeli airstrikes. The situation worsened when an explosion rocked a hospital in Gaza City on Tuesday, causing massive casualties. Hamas accused Israel of a massacre while Israelis blame the blast on an errant Palestinian missile.
The United States has vetoed a United Nations Security Council resolution calling for a pause in hostilities so that emergency supplies can reach Gaza. Brazil worded the draft in a manner aimed at winning U.S. approval. The document criticized Hamas, did not refer to Israel directly, and mentioned a humanitarian pause instead of a ceasefire. But Washington said there was no mention of Israel's right to self-defense and exercised its veto power. Russia abstained, accusing Washington of double standards and hypocrisy. Britain also abstained, while the other 12 members voted in favor. The U.S. position shocked the Palestinian ambassador.
It is beyond belief that some still speak of a right to self-defense of an occupying power that has made clear it is seeking blind vengeance, forced transfer, and annihilation of our people.
Anti-Israel protests have continued in many cities following the deadly explosion at the Al Ali hospital in Gaza City. There were clashes in Beirut between Lebanese security forces and pro-Palestine supporters near the U.S. Embassy. The protesters wanted to denounce Washington for giving military aid and diplomatic support to Israel. But riot police in the Lebanese capital fired tear gas and water cannon to disperse them. In the Greek capital Athens, thousands of people tried to march to the Israeli embassy. However, they were stopped by police who fired tear gas. Tensions in the Middle East and a deepening property crisis on the mainland hammered Hong Kong stocks. The Hang Seng Index tumbled 2.5% as investor confidence soured despite the mainland's economic recovery gaining traction. E-commerce platform JD.com plunged 5.4% after it decided to offer massive discounts, triggering a price war with rival Alibaba. Tech firm Baidu lost 5.3% after its revenue forecast was trimmed by investment bank Goldman Sachs. Interest rate woes squeezed banking stocks, with China Merchants Bank closing 5.3% lower. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index ended the day down by 436 points. The top 10 active stocks, Tencent was down $8.80. The Tracker Fund was down 47 cents, while JD.com was down $5.60. BYD lost $9.40, but Xiaomi was up 40 cents. The forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro's at 8.26. 1,000 Japanese yen will get you 52 Hong Kong dollars, while the Australian dollar is at 4.94. Finally, in Europe, the London FTSE is currently down 71 points. Hong Kong's unemployment rate has remained unchanged for the third straight month. Standing at 2.8%, the rate is the lowest in 4 years. Total employment in the July to September period was around 3.72 million, an increase of 5,800. The government said a boost in spending and tourism will continue to benefit the labor market. And finally, the weather. Mainly cloudy tomorrow with some showers. Temperatures will range between 22 and 27 degrees ahead of a cool weekend. And that's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Thanks for watching. Good night.